Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We have a wonderful presentation for you today. From Historic Green Gables, we have Miss Edwina and John. Welcome.
Thank you all for having us.
So I'm going to have John start off with our presentation. John actually is the reason why Green Gables exists today. We are a nonprofit that's, of course, restoring the home, and I know one of our guests here did say that had we finished it yet, and the answer to that is not quite. We're actually getting started, but we'll tell you a little bit more about our story as we're going forward. So I'm going to turn it over to John.
Okay, well, I love to come into a group like this because you make me feel young.
Thank you.
I got interested in historic preservation actually when I was growing up in Central Virginia, and there were so many old houses there that were falling apart that I got a chance to tour them all and just always kept that interest. So after a long career doing mathematics and law and family mediation, I decided to go back to school and get a degree in historic preservation. And in the process of doing that, one of the things that they want us to do is to look around your community and see, what's historic, what's worthy of preserving, because that's what we get to do. And I found this lovely house that Edwina was telling you about, and I am not the one who is responsible for it. The people who are responsible for it were a couple called William and Nora Wells, who came down from New York and transferred their lives here. And we'll tell you more about that as we go along. So, well, look at there. What does that bring us to?
The Green Gables.
So Green Gables is one of the things that as I started looking around when I was working on my degree, it's one of the last structures left that helped to tell the story of early Melbourne. In 1896, William and Nora Wells came here. They found a just beginning little community. There were only 351 permanent residents in the town at that time. Wells was a industrialist, he was an inventor, he was an engineer, he was a surveyor. His wife Nora was the daughter of a New York State senator, used to good culture. So when they came and they introduced themselves to the community leaders of Melbourne in the 1890s, they were made to feel welcome because they realized these folks have money, they have intelligence, they have engineering skills, they have culture. Let's welcome them into our community. So they built the house right up here. And you'll notice there's nothing else around it. This, by the way, when I first looked at it, I thought this was water, but here's the Indian River and here's the sand. So this was just a little sandy thing. The only vegetation you see is this big tree. Well, here we have a slightly better picture. And for those of you who have seen Green Gables lately, you know it's a lot more ornate than this. So what they built was a very simple house and slowly added on to it. Here's William and Nora working in their yard. Here you see where they've started adding things. Now notice you've still got this beautiful porch here. Now you've got a bay window here. Sooner or later they'll add another bay window up here. Here is the kitchen. They've literally doubled the size of their kitchen. Here, Edwina, do you notice this little box here? Mm-hmm. Well, that little box has puzzled me for a while too, because inside the house they have a wood stove, and of course they had a refrigerator which took ice. So what the family remembers and what seems the sensible thing is this is the box where the Iceman would come and he'd open that door and the family refrigerator would be backed up against that wall. There'd be a door in the back of it so we could open up and shove the ice in. Sometimes you just think about how different our lives are. Eventually they added a turret, and eventually they added an octagon porch. I know some of you have come to Green Gables at one time or another, so you remember those beautiful features. Here's your main entrance. And I called this, in my early drawings, a foyer. Well, we're going to have to change this drawing. I thought I had changed this. Because when I showed these drawings to the family, they looked at me and they said, Mr. Daly, grandmother always said that had to be called the reception room. And she said it in a tone that told you that if grandmother said it, you did it. And then you would have a formal parlor where the honored guests would come that would always be kept neat and clean. Then you would have a family parlor, and then we had a dining room which was connected through a pantry to the kitchen. And then in later years, they added another addition out here. On the upstairs rooms, you had Mr. Wells's room, Mrs. Wells's room, because in the day, a husband and wife of any wealth would certainly not have to share quarters. They had a bathroom way back here. When Stanford took over, he added a bathroom and a sleeping porch, which is out over the porch. In the early pictures I showed you where the front porch is, these rooms come out over that porch. And they were added later. We plan to take those off because although William Wells may have been an engineer, whoever added those wasn't paying much attention. Green Gables is one of the few Queen Anne structures to have been built in South Brevard. Queen Anne is a very specific architectural style. It has things like a turret. It has complex roof lines. It has this octagon. So that's what marks it as Queen Anne. Widow's Walk. Here's the attic that leads up to that trap door. If you've been at Green Gables, those of you who have, you may have noticed in the upstairs room there's a lot of damage to the ceiling, water damage. That happened because this trap door came loose and the rain came in. Life is like that. We have these wooden structures that roll up and down to protect the porch from the storms. Next. And inside, we have this fretwork. Now this fretwork is wooden. Here's a little detail of it. And you'll notice each of these strips of wood is hand carved, notched, and it all fits together like a jigsaw puzzle. If you drove past Green Gables on US 1 15 years ago, you wouldn't even notice it. It was all grown up. The family with people were still living there off and on. But originally, and it's performed like you see it here, it would have sat at the head of what's now Riverview Drive. That would have been his main driveway. So it was important. It was highly visible. Everybody's been to Wells Park. This is basically the first plot of land that he bought. Green Gables is here. He subdivided all this into lots, and this is the area that Wells Park is on. This is the library. This is that fire station that's on the corner there.
Okay, so we're going to kind of fast forward into present time when we get to this part here. So Green Gables, we are of course trying to preserve history for the future. So the house that you see in front of you here is what the house looked like back in 1910. The intention is to bring that house to this point. There were 2 rooms that were built out over the second floor balcony right here that are going to come off because engineering wasn't quite what it should have been for those particular rooms.
William Wells would have done better.
William would have been not so happy with that. But this is a beautiful picture of the house because you can see all the features that John mentioned, the turret, the octagon porch, the widow's walk, and all the little additions of the little bay areas and the very complex roof line. That still exists today. No one actually lived in the house. It was abandoned for their actual living in the 1990s. And then around 2008, 2009, John rediscovered it, doing his work on his degree. And we actually formed the Green Gables nonprofit, is what we are today. And we actually saved it from demolition in 2014, and then put it on the National Historic Register in 2016. And then, as John mentioned, I think to someone here in the audience, somebody asked us how much did it cost to buy the house. It was $1 million. This is what John found when he first looked at the house. And many people that still visit us today drive past on US 1 and they say, I never knew this house was here. So you can see there were boards on the windows and all kinds of chaos inside. You'll see here in just a minute. But the property that this sits on is absolutely stunning. It's a beautiful piece of riverfront property. So you can see all the boards. Inside as well, there were holes in the walls, holes in the ceilings, old furniture. This is what we end up with today. So the house was painted, and then the features were, you know, a little bit more stunning than they were back when it was all covered with vines and everything else. When you come into the house, most of our docents will say to you, welcome back to 1896, because we work very hard to make sure that we stage the house so that it looks like you've just walked in. Maybe the family's off in another room someplace, and you're there. You're right in the period. So Christmas is the prettiest time of year to come see the house. It's decorated quite beautifully, as you can see. This is actually the small dining room. I just wanted to show you that. Go ahead. And this is our living room or family parlor. We just actually acquired some two beautiful new pieces. So these chairs, and you can see behind those two chairs is a beautiful window that looks out over the backyard and into the river area. This little desk here is in Nora's bedroom. And then the one on the left-hand side, that's a picture of the trunk room. And so those steamer trunks that you see stacked up with the hat box on top. This is just the little girl's room, Gladys's room. We have staged as a little toy room, so we've had some interesting toys in there. There's a little tea set off to the left-hand side, and some clothing and things that you can see that would be more period correct. Go ahead. And this is just some close-ups of some of the furnishing in William's room, that master bedroom that has the big turret over the top. This is just some of the furnishings that are in there as well. So another fun piece about the house, and we have to kind of give a shout out to our volunteer, Jean. We have a dollhouse, and she is one of the volunteers who takes great care of this dollhouse. And I love to be able to show you some of the features inside. So the dollhouse is on the left side, is kind of from the outside. That photograph, if you look in the upper left corner on the left, you'll see the couple standing in that little bedroom. And then that's the close-up of them right there. And in this picture here, that is the miniaturized picture of their wedding photograph from 1879. Here's the octagon porch on the right-hand side with all the little characters. She's got all kinds of little glasses of iced tea and pitchers on the table, little dolls. He's got a newspaper in his hand. Somewhere off around here, there's a dog someplace. And then, of course, to the left is the kitchen. And so the kitchen has little miniature apple pies. And we also share with the community the events that we do. So, for example, we have things where you, as the community, can come to things like antique car shows, antique motorcycle shows, a Christmas lighting, tree lighting. We have things that we do like murder mysteries. We've had cookouts and picnics for the 4th of July. And we also have a booth in Twin Rivers Local Vintage, which is an antique store near Makoto's. And we're able to bring in items that maybe people have donated to us that they want us to, raise some money from. One of the other things that we do, and you can see John, he's in the midst of all this, we actually do an education program for young children. Most of them come from homeschool or parochial school, but they come to the house, they get a tour of the house, they get to play old-fashioned games like jacks and marbles, or even get married later on when they grow up.
It's a marvelous place for marriages.
So we have a beautiful setting in the backyard. It's one of those things where people do call.
Edwina?
Yes.
That's Bonnie and her husband.
Is that right? Is that you guys?
Yes, it is. That's what
I didn't know that.
Bonnie!
There you go.
We did not get married there. We were just making these
Make a
shots
picture.
to promote, and it is such a beautiful place. It was a great time.
That left is the house as it looked with all its different additions back in 1910. Then we cross over to the right upper corner, and you can see how it looked like when it was all dilapidated. Off to the lower left, you see it as it stands now. And then to the far right, when we get everything back to place, the second floor balcony will come back on. Now, we're not going to be as Key Westy looking as this picture depicts us. It's this last picture to show you the view that we have from the east lawn, or I call it the backyard, but the east lawn, where the Melbourne Causeway goes right over the river. And there's times out there where you can see dolphins jumping. There have been times when I've come out of the house with tourists and we've looked out over the river, and I said, oh, look, the Chamber of Commerce is queued just in time, these 2 sailboats to go right by. It's really pretty.
Thank you so much, Edwina and John, for volunteering your time to be here with us today. We appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you all for coming.
you.
I
Thank you.
enjoyed chatting with you all.
Very well